What's good? It's Capital X TV. We are on episode, gotta double check, like episode 17. So like it says in the title, this episode's called Wisdom Unique. But before I get into it, I just want to ask y'all to please hit the sub button down there. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell. You'll be doing me a solid, man, you know what I mean? So, Wisdom Unique. Let's get into it. It's basically going into my background, telling you a little bit more about myself. This is for those that stumble across the, across the page and don't know who I am. And also, like I said in earlier episodes, this is also for those that think they know me but don't know me. You know what I'm saying? So, I am originally from Brooklyn, New York. I came up from the Marcy houses. Y'all should know who the Marcy, where the Marcy houses or what the Marcy houses is from Jay-Z. I currently live in Nordland, Norway, of all places. Yeah, that's a whole other vlog, how I wound up in Norway. But let's go to Marcy. My parents, they basically migrated to the United States from Puerto Rico during the Great Migration in the 50s. They didn't come together, they came separately. My mom's came, she landed in New York before my father. I believe my mom's was like 17 years old. And my pops came shortly after. I said I think he was like 18 or 19 when he came to New York. And they knew each other in Puerto Rico briefly, but they was actually from separate towns. I think my pops tried to get with my mom's, but she wasn't trying to hear that. My father was supposedly this, he was egotistical, thinking he was all that type of cat. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, they ran into each other in New York. I think they were both living in Spanish Harlem at the time, and seeing familiar faces, they started kicking it. One thing led to another. They ended up getting together, got married. So my older brother and my sister were both born in Manhattan while we lived in Spanish Harlem, and they needed a bigger place, so my pops ended up moving us to Brooklyn, and he got us a spot in the projects, which, sometimes you had to be on a list. I don't know if they was on a list or how they got in there, but they got into the projects in Brooklyn. So we lived in Marcy houses. I said it was made famous by Jay-Z, but trust me, it ain't nothing to brag about. It never was. But yeah, he made it famous, and it's like other rappers made their projects famous, but living in the projects, like I said, ain't nothing to be proud of, man. So we ended up moving out of Marcy. Like I said, my story's different from other rappers. I came out of Marcy houses, but I wasn't raised there. Maybe lived there for first 5, 6, 7 years of my life. And a lot of people came out of Marcy, actually, not just Jay-Z. Jay-Z just made him really popular, but Jazzo came out of Marcy. Actually, I was born the same year as Jazzo, a month earlier. Let's see, who else came out of there? Memphis Bleak came out of there. I think Mos Def came out of there. Comedian Tracy Morgan came out of there. Who else came out of there? Papoose came out of Marcy. So yeah, it's like a lot of people came out of Marcy. And what makes my story different, like I said, is we moved around a lot. Back when I was a kid there, the crime rate was crazy. There's a lot of gangs, and we were one of very few Puerto Rican families that lived in Marcy at the time. And I believe at the time my pops was working in the Bronx. So he was driving from Brooklyn to the Bronx. And so eventually we ended up moving to the Bronx. We had more family migrating into the South Bronx. There was a lot, there was bigger Puerto Rican communities there. So then we ended up moving there, and we moved it to a couple of spots in the Bronx before we ended up moving to Jersey, because my pops ended up getting a job in Jersey, and he was, driving back and forth and got tired of that. And he also liked Jersey. He thought it was calm, and peaceful. But when he got us there, we didn't live in Patterson or anything like that. We did live like 35 minutes outside of New York, crossing the George Washington Bridge, rushing down Route 80, Interstate 80. And it was a small town called Dover. And my father found that to be a little too urbanized. It was like predominantly Hispanic, yeah, but it was predominantly Hispanic, and yeah, there was just a lot of drugs and things going on there. So my pops didn't like that, moved us out of there, and for me, it was just a series of moving around that just never stopped, even to this day. You know, I said now I live in Northern Norway, and since I moved to Norway, I've lived in 7 spots. But yeah, I moved around a lot, you know. When we moved to Jersey, we was constantly going back and forth to New York every weekend, every holiday, you know, summer vacations. So, you know, it's like, so they took me out of the city for a bit, but they never took, you know, the city out of me. I just, you know, I felt like that was my home. So when I was like 16 years old and I dropped out of high school, I ended up moving back to New York on my own. Went to the South Bronx because I was more familiar with the South Bronx, and you know, met up with some people there. I lived on Forest Ave, right there by Jackson Avenue Projects. I stayed on Forest Ave for a bit. But yeah, you know, we was always trying to get up out of the hood. You know, some would say, well, you lived in Jersey, why don't you chill there? To me, Jersey was not much different than the hood. It was like these concentration camps. You know, I compared living in Jersey. It's like living in Jersey was like living in a federal prison. You know, it was a little bit safer, a little bit more cushy, but you were still locked down. You were still locked down. It's like, yeah, lower middle class families, you know, and some just hanging down the poverty line with their head just above the poverty line. Yeah, it sucked. And living in the hood, and you know, it's more like being in state prison. So it's a little bit more hostile, it's a little bit more dangerous, but you know, that's where I felt at home. So that's why I kept going back. But me and my boys was always, you know, making moves trying to get out of the hood. And some people mean it, they want to get out of the hood. Some people don't, they glorify that, you know. It's like, I don't understand it. But I was always trying to get up, you know, into a different situation. And yeah, I used to take chances. So it's like one day I just like decided to go to Florida. Up and boom, went to Florida and landed there with like $90 in my pocket. Ended up staying just under 2 years. I stayed in Miami first, in the city. And from Miami, actually, I left Miami because there was a riot going on. It was kind of getting crazy, and took off. I was with somebody, and we took off and ended up in Fort Lauderdale. Liked Fort Lauderdale and stayed there. Took off to Puerto Rico. Lived in Puerto Rico for a bit. Yeah, to be honest, when I went to Puerto Rico on my own and was running around there for like, yeah, close to 2 years, I was on the run. That's another vlog I'll get into. Not to glorify it, but, you know, just to kind of, you know, put it in kids' heads. You don't want to live like that. Living life on the run was stressful. So I ran around the island for a bit. Yeah, ended up mostly staying in Santurce at Parada 15, which, man, was no joke, man. I thought the South Bronx was rough. When I got to Parada 15 in Santurce, I was like, yo. It's like it made the South Bronx look like a walk in the park, man. No lie, it was insane there. You know, I stayed there for a while. Where else have I lived, man? Just a lot of different spots, man. Yo, I even at one point ended up living in Alabama. You know, moved to Alabama. I landed in Chelsea, Alabama, a small town, and you know, I was staying there and ended up getting a job. Like I think it was in Bessemer or something like that. But once the locals, the rednecks, they realized that I wasn't visiting somebody there, that I was living there. Yeah, it got a little, the vibes wasn't right. I was like, yo, I need to get the fuck out of here before some shit happens. So took off and moved to the south side of Birmingham, which was more, you know, more of a diverse crowd. It's more of a melting pot. So chilled in the south side of Birmingham. I used to hang out on the west side of Birmingham. If y'all know Birmingham, yeah, all my people that I worked with was from the west side, so I used to hang out there. It was pretty crazy. lived in Cali, took off to Cali one time. So it's like, you know, multiple times I got out the hood. But mentioning Cali, man, yeah, I lived in a couple of spots in Cali. I lived in Oxnard. I lived in Ventura. I lived in the Bay Area. I actually, you know, went around all Cali trying to find a spot that I liked, you know, so thinking that I might settle down there. I liked San Diego, you know, but I ended up staying in Oakland for a bit, and that's actually where I recorded my first demo. So when I took off to Cali, that was around, yeah, 84, going into 84. So I was just transitioning from breaking to rapping, you know, to get serious with it. And yeah, it's cool because I ended up sending a song to get a copyright while I was in Oakland. And that's in 84, so kind of like, yeah, documented when I really started taking the rap thing serious. So, so I had been rapping, you know, just dabbling with it for like, I don't know, 2 years or so while I was still breaking, and you know, I was hanging with my man Knowledge, and you know, so I was transitioning. You know what I mean? That's the best way to put it. So when I got to Cali and I was trying to get into the rapping thing, I said I copyrighted my first song. It was around 84. I was also, you know, trying to find what rap name I was gonna use. Master T just didn't work for, you know, for MC, and I didn't think so. I had this list, and yeah, they was all horrible names, but but I started thinking and remembering that when I was building with my boy Knowledge Unique, which I talk about him in episode 2. You know, Knowledge was a dope street rapper, and he used to be incredible coming off the top. To this day, decades later, I still haven't met anybody so smooth that used to come off the top like him. So smooth. It's like people, you know, tend to that come off the top. They tend to repeat their words and make up words. He was telling stories. Like I said, you'd be walking down the street and he'd be flowing and pointing things out. And it's like you would swear it was written because it was so smooth, you know. But it was impossible. There was no way they were written because of what he used to, you know, interject while he was rapping. And I had mentioned when he, like, if he got stuck, that's when he would come up with these little catchy things, and he would do the call and response. You know, while he got you in the call and response, boom, he would get back into, you know, into his zone and keep going. He was incredible. I said when I was running with Knowledge, I was still a breakdancer, but I really wanted to be an MC, you know, deep down. So on the sneak tip, I used to try to write, and I used to try to flow. And man, I was horrible. I was horrible. Some people might think I'm still horrible, but whatever, man. I was really bad back then. But eventually, after, you know, I continued trying because I was determined. I caught a couple, and I got confident enough to spit in front of Knowledge and impressed him enough that he took me under his wing, and he started giving me tips and, yeah, just schooling me. And, yeah, we just ended up building about a lot of things. And Knowledge, he was a 5%er from the 5% Nation. So he wasn't putting me on to the 5% Nation, but at one point he had said, you know what, man, I'm going to call you Wisdom. Because he said that the things that I would kick to him, yeah, it's like a unique wisdom that I had, that I possessed. So he started calling me Wisdom Unique, and he's like, Born Wisdom Unique, you know. He said it was Born Wisdom Unique, but he would call me Wisdom, period. I even had a gold medallion made up, a gold plate that said Wisdom back then. Well, later on, anyway. But that's what he called me, Wisdom. So I remembered that. So that's the name I took on. Instead of Born Wisdom Unique, I took off the Born, you know, because, yeah, the connection with the 5% Nation, you know. So I put Kid, because a lot of people used to call me Kid. I had this baby face. So Kid Wisdom Unique was born. And I got that documented too, because it's like the next track that I sent out to copyright, which actually came a year later. I had left California, went back to New York, back to the East Coast, and a friend of mine that I went to junior high school with briefly, his name was Hector Del Valle. He had gotten into a car accident, drunk driving, and he got paralyzed from, yeah, from the chest down. It's really, I remember when that happened. It was really sad, man. But after he had went through like all types of rehabilitation and therapy and whatnot, Hector was in a wheelchair, and he started campaigning against drinking and driving really hard. And I had met up with him a couple of times, and I had mentioned that I was doing the rapping thing. I had mentioned that I was like inspired by the message, you know, and that I wanted to kick positive, you know, as positive lyrics as possible and whatnot. So one day he approached me and he asked me if I would write a track against drinking and driving. So I did that. So that was the next song that I had sent into copyright, and I had put my, you know, my AKA Kid Wisdom Unique on the copyright. So I joined the fight against drinking and driving with Hector. It's like, yo, what Hector was doing was incredible. You know, most people would just roll over, man, and he just instead took his, you know, situation and flipped it and started doing something positive. Going to schools and talking to kids and things like that. He was all over the television, man. And at one point he even met President Reagan, that commended him for what he was doing. And he was like on all types of talk shows, Donahue and Geraldo Rivera, everybody that was popular back then, he was on all them shows. So I got to be sort of a part of that with him. I know at one point we had got set up to rap the song that we did against drinking and driving on public service TV, public whatever they call it, you know, public access TV, cable TV. So it was set up, we went to the station. It wasn't like a music video. We just went there and we rocked the song live, and they taped it so they can play it periodically. So that ended up being on cable in Jersey, and they also played it in Manhattan cable TV. I actually got a picture of that has like the information about the song, the way they typed it up back then. Like I said, it was 85, and also got a screenshot, a picture of a television while we was on television. It was me and my boy LS. I was like rocking the Kango, and I had this shirt made up that said something like United Nation, you know, against drunk drivers, something like that. So it's crazy because, yeah, it's cool that that at least got that document. You know, there wasn't no camera phones or nothing back then. It was difficult at times to document the things that I was involved in and that I did with my boys and whatnot. But we got enough bits and pieces, you know. So yeah, that basically, if you look at it, I go by Raptivist now. I am a Raptivist. I try to really, you know, tackle hard social issues such as, you know, the death penalty and mass incarceration and things like that. But it's not something that I just jumped on recently, you know, not 5 years ago, not even 10 years ago. You're talking back in 85, I was already, you know, using rap as something, you know, to tackle social issues. So it wasn't called the it wasn't called Raptivism back then, but that's what I was doing. So this kind of gives a bird's eye view of how long I've been a Raptivist. And sure, I've tried to rap, you know, and get the bag like everybody else, but I always really, this is what I've always wanted to do. This was what I was doing from the beginning, you know, was putting the message, you know, ahead of everything else. There's like the message is before the money, the message before the music, you know, even though it's with the music, it goes ahead. It's about the message for me. It always has been. So it's cool that I have that documented, you know. So basically that's it, man. That's how I got my start. You know, like I said, I was Wisdom Unique, and in a later episode I will share how I became X, because that's a dope story too, man. So I'm going to share that, you know, the making of X. Alright, so yo, this is Capital X TV. One more time, I'm going to remind y'all, please subscribe. If you made it this far in the video, you know I'm asking you to subscribe. I would appreciate it. And hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified next time I post a video. Alright, yo, till next time, it's Capital X TV. Peace. you know, X, capital X. That's another cool story, you know, in itself. And that's it, a little bit more about me. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, remember, hit that subscription and hit that notification bell. I would appreciate it. This is capital X TV. Till next time, peace.